Martinez, and I have chapter 16.
Alright. Alan, what can you tell us about section 1 of chapter 16?
So, chapter 16, section 1 talks about how school, how public schools expanded, and how Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois, how they had different, how they looked differently at black education. So yeah.
How and why did public schools expand during the late 1800s?
Public schools expanded due to philanthropists or wealthy people. They helped out. They donated money to schools, and also parents pressured many local government officials to make school longer and from season to season. So yeah, and also the local governments were also trying to put a limit on child labor, so that also was a factor for schools expanding. So, yeah.
Alright. How did opportunities for higher education increase after the Civil War?
150 colleges opened after that due to many philanthropists and many wealthy people, such as Edward Carnegie, I think it was. He donated $75 million to the University of Chicago, and that opened up a bunch of new places for the University of Chicago. And so yeah, many philanthropists gave a lot to many colleges, and so many colleges opened up to help out other students go to school, and many schools were also opening up. And during the 1900s, 8.6% of teenagers they went more to high school due to the opening of more schools.
Who was Booker T. Washington?
Booker T. Washington, he was one of the founders of the Tuskegee Institute, and so what he did was he was a black educator, and he helped out many African Americans, and he also he never really received any schooling when he was a kid, and so he worked as a janitor. I think it was at the school, and he used that money to go to school to learn and to write and to become an educator eventually. And so he had different points of views than W.E.B. Du Bois, I think it was. So yeah.
What can you tell us about section 2 of chapter 16?
Section 2 talks about the different culture and how in the 20th century, how culture was changing. We started having movies, new music, and we started having sports and everything, and we started having amusement parks and all that stuff.
How was American music changing?
American music changing was because black musicians started coming up, and so they invented jazz and ragtime and a bunch of different music, spiritual music. So yeah.
What were people reading for information and entertainment?
Most people starting in the 20th century started reading newspapers and magazines, because magazines were coming up, and just stuff like that. And also there were this new genre of books of popular fiction, such as The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, and all those stories started to come up due to it.
What new sports were coming in, changing?
New sports that were coming in were baseball and football and all those new sports. And also basketball, which was invented by Dr. James Naismith. It was invented as a sport to be played during the winter, to keep athletes really to keep them active during the winter.
What can you tell us something about section 3?
Section 3, it talks about how it was during the Jim Crow era, like when African Americans were being discriminated and all that.
How were African Americans discriminated against after Reconstruction?
Many African Americans were discriminated due to they weren't allowed to vote because they had to take like fake literacy tests or something instead of voting, and so they weren't allowed voting in the South states, and also segregation, like there were different types of restrooms, like there was white restrooms and there were black restrooms, well, colored people restrooms.
Yeah.
So it was like all different and everything for the black community. It was really different for them because like they were being discriminated.
Can you tell me a little bit how did African Americans resist the discrimination?
Most African Americans resisted the discrimination due to going into the NAACP. Like the NAACP was an organization that like helped civil rights for African American people, and W.E. Boys was one of the he worked in one of the offices of the NAACP, and so he helped out like doing civil rights movements and all that.
What did the NAACP do to help African Americans? Like, what did they do?
Well, what they did was what they tried to do was like they tried to make like protests for civil rights, and so like their purpose was to abolish segregation and discrimination and all that stuff. And like it had more than 6,000 members and over 50 branches. So yeah.
Ellen, what can you tell us about Section 4?
So Section 4 talks about how women's role was becoming much more bigger and just working in the house and everything. How they got their rights more. And what was there to debate about that? Debate between it.
What kind of work did women do outside of their homes?
The work that they did outside of their homes was like domestic work and all that. Like they like cleaned, cooked, and they babysit and all that stuff.
What were some issues in the debate over women's equality?
The things over that, like the debate over women's equality was do they really like what it says here is like do they really need to vote? Do they really need these rights? And like the 4 women's rights were like that we are equal, like men and women are equal. So, yeah.
Who was the most popular young woman in the 1890s?
I would say the most popular girl in the 1890s would be the Gibson girl.
Can you tell me a little bit about her?
Well,
like, why was she so important?
So the Gibson girl, she was like a modern. She was like a fiction character. Like she was modern but respectable. And so she actually acted in different roles for women. Like she changed her roles sometimes, and so it talked about like how she went to college and like rather than wearing a skirt and all that stuff, she like dressed up kind of like a man with a cap and like with pants on and all that stuff. So, yeah.
Well, that might be all for today.
All right. Thanks for having me, Jalen.
All right, you too, Alan. Thank you.